Sorry. I feel very differently about it than you guys feel. That's why I'm laughing. I'm like, how do I?
Oh no. Why?
Yeah. I've never called myself a neo-soul artist because I never thought I was, and I always thought that's the reason why my first album never is kind of mentioned in that same respect as those other artists, because I don't think a lot of hardcore neo-soul fans consider me to be neo-soul, and I think they're right. And I think my first album was definitely produced in Philadelphia, which was a city that was doing a lot of the soul music at that time. But it didn't come out of a touch of jazz, like, Flow Tree and music and Jill. It didn't come out of there. Not the same producers at all. And I think, and they're great, by the way. I'm not saying that in a bad way. I'm saying that the sound I think it was a bit different. But I think the producers did probably feel a need to fit into the trend of whatever was going on at that time. But me as a songwriter, like the way that I write songs at the piano before I go into the studio with a producer, it's so different from what ended up being produced on my first album. And I think I've tried to correct that later, okay, well, let's try to get some producers that understand me a little bit better musically, so my music can, be properly executed in a way that I feel that it should have always been. It's very difficult when, a publisher slaps a label on you and says you're this, and then there's a lot of people saying, well, we don't really think she's that, and then it's you just kind of don't know where to fit in, and I'm like, I don't really think I'm that either. So where do you fit in? But then press is going to always call me that forever, no matter what. It's you can't escape it. And you're like, well, and I always say what I'm saying now. I never really thought I was. When I think of I love Erykah Badu, love her to pieces. She is a queen of so many things. When I listen to me and I listen to her, I don't hear anything similar. So I never understood why people thought that. And I think a lot of times it's just association, I think. It's just an association thing. People associate you with certain people, so then that's what you are, and then that's it. And as a young artist, I definitely had issues with that. And a lot of people say, hey, are you going to make an album that sounds like your first album? And I'm always like, no.
Yeah.
Because I think I've been trying to undo, what happened on my first album when I wasn't as vocal. I wasn't as assertive, to say, yeah, I don't want that. I kind of definitely let a lot of people come in and just kind of do things. And I'm like, okay, if everybody likes it, fine. And then you have to explain why you're not something. And it's just trust me, it's very difficult.
Right. Wow.
And it's been my entire career. It's funny, I was just playing Emotional Roller Coaster on the piano the other day. I was showing Kwame the actual chords that I wrote for the song, which sound nothing like the chords that are on the record that you guys know. And he was like, wow. That is really crazy.
That is
so
crazy.
Yeah, so I know.
It's actually pretty interesting because we just had Music Soul Child on the show last week, and 2 weeks ago, and he said something similar with his debut album. We praised that album, and then he kind of said, I wasn't really happy with that album either. So it's interesting to hear artists speak like this. But I have to tell you, Vivian, when I hear a song,
first album, I thought it was great.
Exactly.
I love Music's first album. He makes great albums, just period. But I think sometimes when there is a quote unquote movement, I think a lot of times people kind of get caught up in that, and then producers totally follow trends, and so forth and so on. So you can just kind of get caught up in a sound, and then for the rest of your life, you have to keep explaining why you want people to stop saying that.
Yeah.
And they're like, but why? Aren't you the neo-soul king or queen? And it's like, no, I never was. It's like, it's just very interesting to be an artist that grew up listening to everything. Like everything. Right. I have so many influences. People always talk about Philadelphia International music. I definitely love, so don't even get me wrong, my statement wrong that I'm about to say. My parents were more Motown lovers, so I didn't even get into the sound of Philadelphia until I was an adult, honestly. Like a lot of those records I didn't really get into until I was definitely like, out of high school where I grew up. Like I'm 5 years old knowing like every Supreme song and, every, Motown record ever made, every Holland Dozier Holland record, that's like my, my upbringing. But, so I didn't even get into that until later. But, like, it's like if you say where you're from and who you might know, it's like people just automatically have, like, this whole template of who you are. And it's very difficult. I think that's why I don't think I've ever done well in press, because I think early on I used to be, like, upset about it, And, you're young. You don't really know how to, deal with the press yet, and you're kind of just going off of emotion. And I think that I've always been like a little like defensive about it. Where now I can laugh now because this has been going on so long. It's like funny now. It's like I almost know what people are going to say before they say it. Like, your first album was, why did you do another album? Like, like I can write the whole script, and it just is what it is. But it's funny. It's funny. That's why I laughed after you guys said what you said. I was like, oh boy. So in addition to the sound aspect of my first album, it was definitely a heartbreak body of work as well. So oftentimes when people say that, your first album, sometimes they could be referencing the sound, but a lot of times they're also referencing the heartbreak, the sad girl. Writing. And, a lot of people, someone's always going through something, so a lot of people just miss that, and that's another thing that I was trying to get away from. Like, okay, that was fine. That was like a real story about, my first love. I wrote Emotional Roller Coaster when I was 19. So by the time it came out, it was like, 3 or 4 years old. And I'm like, okay, that was that. And, now I'm just kind of really grown. And and I don't see relationships the same way that I saw them when I was 19, 20, 21, and 22, which would be the years in which, compositions on my first album were made between that time frame, because half of it was already made when I signed to Sony. That time, because I have a lot of it with Eric Roberson, like a third of my first album. So a lot of it was already done, and so it's like it tells the story of like these few years of my life as a very young girl or a young woman, and just going through the ups and downs of love. Everyone has that first big boom, heartbreak that kind of shakes you. And that's what that was about. So to try to repeat something that really doesn't happen again. Well, hopefully it doesn't. It's really difficult, it's a difficult thing.